It's great to have the top digital champions of the MENA region, born out of the UAE, with us in this panel today. So let me welcome Jayesh Patel, the CEO of WEO Bank, Maaz Sheikh, the CEO of Stars Play, and Bassem Nahlawi is the Managing Director at Careem. So I think the planets has aligned right now. I mean, we heard from the first 2 days of the event how is the main advanced technologies have reached its maturity, and we're living in a region that's thriving with growth. The youth represent about 55% of the population, which means appetite for adopting digital type of solution is at its peak. I think you have experienced that in your own businesses. So it's great to dive into that. And let me start with the questions asking you, how do you deploy and make use of this technological evolution and this advanced technology in thriving your own business? And maybe you can give a small introduction about each business when you're answering that.
Okay, fantastic. I'll go at it. So Jayesh Patel, we are a digital bank, proudly born out of the UAE. We've been up and running for about 18 months, and it's been an incredibly exciting journey. So look, I think technology, I think, Khalifa, it's an incredibly important question because a lot of industries are either going to make it or won't make it based on this technological change. Yeah? I think if you look at banking, banking is very unique. At the end of the day, it's a service, yeah, and it's a service you can consume remotely from anywhere. I think there are three big things we are doing. Yeah? One is we need to change our organizations. Yeah? The organization structure and the people have to change to adopt to this new environment. It's easier for companies like us that are new, harder for bigger companies because they risk existing revenues. I think the second big thing that needs to happen is there has to be a shift from this traditional large CapEx models to OpEx models. The lifespan of technology has become so short. If you amortize your costs over 7 years, by that time the technology is completely irrelevant. Yeah? So you have to move to this OpEx model, which I think is paramount. And I think the third biggest thing is your operating model has to change as an entity. Yeah? Banks traditionally generated revenues just from customers, and they built a lot of technology but never sold it. If you look at WEO Bank, we're not just building solutions for customers, but we're also going to build a platform which others can consume. So starting to generate this new revenue. So I think you have to do all three to try to move with this technological change.
And I mean, if I may comment, you're also a veteran of the UAE financial institutes, from traditional digital within a traditional player and now completely digital. What would be the difference for this phase comparing to the earlier two?
Yeah, I think, look, there's an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is you start from scratch, so you don't have legacy revenues. Companies struggle to change because if you make change too quickly, you erode legacy revenues. Yeah, and at the end of the day, shareholders want growth. Yeah, they don't want 2 years of dip and then growth. They want consistent growth. So I think bigger companies globally struggle to make that dramatic shift because they have to risk revenues. Yeah, I think the disadvantage being brand new is when you're part of a larger organization, there's a lot of assets that have been built, and you can get started faster. Yeah, when you're brand new, you have to start from scratch. Yeah, but I think in the longer term, building from scratch is a more sustainable model than trying to transform something, because the pain related to the shift of people and technology is much greater. Yeah, in the hybrid model, I'd say.
So Maaz?
Yes, sir. My name is Maaz, part of the Stars Play team. We're a streaming service born out of UAE, now in our 10th year. Going back to Abu Hassan's point about technology and the role it played for us, we are perhaps a perfect example of a product that wouldn't have born had it not been for technology. And going back 10 years ago when we first got started, the broadcast industry in this part of the world was quite settled between free-to-air broadcasters like NBC and traditional pay TV broadcasters like OSN. And our thesis was that we will offer the same content, but offer it through a streaming service and avoid the cost of satellite and deploying boxes in each home. And that was a significant shift. But the challenge at that time was there was this perception that perhaps the infrastructure in the region is not ready. But when we looked at the data, all we had to do was look at YouTube consumption in the region, even back in 2015. GCC was one of the highest per capita consumption for YouTube, which convinced us that the infrastructure has to be ready, is ready, and the consumer shift is also happening because YouTube consumption is doing so well. It was just that our industry, as a media industry, we were in denial that this shift is happening in US and it's happening in Western Europe, but in the Gulf markets and in Middle East, it'll take another 10 years. And alhamdulillah, we got started in 2015, and the first year itself, we proved that the shift is happening now, consumers are moving, and the infrastructure was ready. So for us, the mobile and the last mile fiber to the home, plus the core backbones to be able to handle that content distribution, all those have been key elements of making this service successful in the region. And of course, there's a spectrum between the infrastructure in the Gulf markets, where last mile fiber, as well as mobile 4G and 5G is quite dominant versus going to Maghreb and Egypt. But even in the North Africa and Egypt regions, these markets are leapfrogging and going straight to mobile broadband. Obviously, they're not deploying fiber to the home now, unless they're in smart cities. But, and that's where we see mobile consumption being much higher, whereas in the Gulf markets, we see smart television consumption being much higher.
I guess Kareem have a share of its advantages also on taking advantage of this technological evolution. So if you can cover some of that.
Yeah, I'm Basil Nahlawi from Kareem. We were born a ride-hailing app 12 years ago, but turned into an everything app that provides 22 plus services in places like Dubai, between rides, groceries, food, payments, and so on. And to your question, I think there's two parts to this equation. One is the customer. Like Khalifa was saying, this customer, 60%, 55% is below the age of 30, which means digital is the only way forward. If you're not part of it, you're irrelevant. And the second part is talent. Now, the customer, long gone, I'll give you an example in food, for example. Long gone are the days where you can order food on a phone and just wait till it arrives, right? I'll wait 1 hour, hour and a half. It's okay. Whenever it arrives, it arrives. That's how we used to live. Yeah. Today, if you're 2 minutes late, you get a call, tell you, why are you 2 minutes late? That's the expectation of this young customer. And to do that, you need technology to start to understand these differences. I'll give you one example again. Today, we try to figure out where this restaurant is, how far a captain parks. We take into account into our estimated time of arrival. We take into account you're ordering a biryani pot and not a kebab sandwich because it takes a lot longer to prepare. All that feeds into your estimated time of arrival, so you can give a very customized, accurate service to the customer. So this is how you use technology, whether it was AI, machine learning, to capture these details per order, per customer. And the second thing is, how do you get the talent to work on this? Because I think that's probably what plagued us for the longest time. And the answer to that is, you have to work on challenging problems to attract the best talent in the world to be in our region. The harder the problem to solve, the better the talent that you can attract back home or to this region. And that's how you end up building platforms that can actually compete with global players and actually beat them in our region. So solve for the customer, work on the hardest problems, and it works out to create this ecosystem in our region.
So by definition, I mean, some of the entrepreneurs in other parts of the world might look at you and think that you guys are lucky because you're born as a company in a business environment that fosters innovations. You're born, as we talked, a digital nation, especially if you're like born out of the UAE, servicing the whole GCC regions, and then the whole MENA, which is opportunities of growth is high with a young population. How do you believe this is the importance of such, fostering innovation type of environment in helping you accelerate your growth?
Yeah, look, I think for us, it's great that we are born in the UAE. To Basil's talent point, we have 42 nationalities who work for us. We have people all the way from Brazil to Australia moving here to build interesting stuff. Yeah, so I think it's great being here at the cutting edge. I think one of the things in the UAE, we've got talent, we've got incredibly resilient connectivity, yeah, which is provided by Khalifa companies like yours. And then we've got government really accelerating digital innovation. So we are born in an ideal place, which is great. I think it makes us harder to scale to places that haven't got this level of capabilities. Yeah, but I think given the talent pool here, I think it's a challenge we'll thrive on. Yeah, and I think Maz and Basil have done more of this than we've done at WIO.
So for us, I think I would say it goes in phases and stages. When we were first getting started, I think the most critical phase for us was establishing the company, getting the regulatory license. I remember going to the National Media Council and learning that we are going to be the first company to get the official streaming license in the region. And then at the same time, we were working with TCOM. What really helped us was this initial phase from a regulatory and company setup point of view was very simple. Because I've heard of difficult stories in other parts of the world where the founders will spend a lot of capital just in the company setup, and most of the money goes to the legal fees and company setup fees. Fortunately, that was not the case for us. So I think the initial phase is very critical because you want to save your capital and resources in actually developing the product rather than the company setup and the licenses and whatnot. The second area where it was critical for us was the UAE regulatory body was helpful in us helping get license in other GCC countries as well. Because at that time, the markets were still evolving, the regulation around streaming was still evolving. So having one regulatory body or agency within GCC take the lead and give a streaming license, legitimizing us, was a key step for us to then move into other markets. So I think that in the initial phase, it's simplification of the company setup and regulatory approval. I'm sure it's different in the financial world, but for us, being the first streaming service, it was very smooth.
Yeah, I think Kareem was a little bit earlier and a bit different in our case. I think to your point of being born in the UAE, I don't think Kareem could have existed if it wasn't born in the UAE, just from so many challenges early on. The UAE was very helpful to help us set up and also attract the talent. Talent doesn't just want to go anywhere, right, in the world. And the UAE can attract nearly anyone from any part of the world. However, the harder part was the expansion, trying to get to the 10 countries we are in today. Expansion is a lot more difficult than those sitting in the US. You start a company in Silicon Valley today, tomorrow you just switch on New York City. Next morning you switch on Chicago City and you don't have to do anything extra. In our region, you just want to go to the next city, you have to set up everything all over again. So that part was probably a lot more challenging for us. And every government has a different view. So that was, we had to skip the regulation part. We had to just go out, expand, and worry about regulations next, which is how we probably quickly got to our 10 to 13 countries that we got to.
So, I mean, you guys are classified as technological platform that you develop and you service new type of service from a traditional banking service to a digital bank, from a traditional broadcasting solutions into an OTT, an over-the-top type of solution, and same thing for mobility type of solution with Kareem. in the global agenda, we've seen these technological platforms, the major platform have also contributed in creating job, social impact in the market that they're operating in. So I would like to touch two areas. One, how do you contribute to the digital economy of the markets? And now we see a lot of the markets in the Middle East, specifically in the UAE and the rest of the GCC, they have a specific target for creating growth in the digital economy. So how do you contribute into the economical growth in the digital economy and the social impact that you do? And then the other part, which is, why local? I mean, what's the difference between a local platforms versus global platform? And what's the advantage of the local platform over international platform?
Okay, I'm going to mix it up, Khalifa. I'll start with the second question first. Yeah. Yesterday, I think in one of the panels the day before, we heard ChatGPT took, I think, $500 million, the latest version, to deploy. Yeah. When you have such large costs, yeah, you will have these global players who will dominate. Yeah, has to happen. When it comes to last mile, you have to localize. Yeah. Banking is a business that does not migrate across borders well. Yeah, and for many reasons. Payment systems are very local. Consumer behavior is very local. I think there's a very real important issue in banking. You rely on an ecosystem. If the ecosystem providers are external, you can risk your country suddenly shutting down from a banking perspective. Yeah? And that's why it's paramount to localize. Yeah? And that's why governments globally build local systems and local players integrate into that. Yeah? So I think banking is unique in that space, that it's governed in a manner to ensure continuity locally, and therefore the last mile matters a lot. Yeah? If you look at the impact of digital businesses, and I give you an example on banking, yeah? It used to take days to open a bank account. Now it takes minutes. Yeah? And it's not just about opening a bank account. It's about managing your money well. Yeah? You get insights. You get reports. You get ideas on when you're going to run out of money, how to better plan money. You can invest on the same platform. The idea is that you will make better decisions. With better decisions, you'll more optimally use your money, and then you will see growth. Yeah? As an industry, we're doing many things. We're building digital capabilities, but we're also opening up APIs that are now allowing fintechs to join, startups to start using us, thus creating a whole new business environment. Yeah? So I think with digitization, a few things happen. One, you have the rise of new industries, yeah, and new capabilities. Two, existing industries flourish because now they have more data and more information. Yeah? And I think the aggregation of that yields a better society, a more informed one, with better decisions being taken.
So Maaz, I think that fits exactly on the Stars Play agenda. You're working in 22 markets. You're competing with the global best and biggest player when it comes to streaming solution. And the markets that you're operating in also demand contribution in their digital growth. So how does it mean?
Sure. I think Jayesh mentioned it. Localization is key. So when Basil mentioned the kebabs sandwich versus biryani pot, besides me getting hungry, that's that's exactly the point, that I think understanding that local consumers' unique needs and being able to serve that product is the number one advantage regional platforms have against the global platforms. And same applies for us on content, whether it's, even though we might be serving Hollywood content, we might be serving anime from Japan or Turkish series, there's still an element of building a message around it, marketing it to the right audience, and packaging it in a way that the Saudi audience in Saudi can connect with Naruto, Boruto as anime. And there's a certain art to doing that. And that's what we pride ourselves in speaking their tone of voice, in packaging the product and delivering that experience in exactly the way they want it. So for example, our anime content is dubbed in multiple Arabic dialects, including Fusha, Syrian, Egyptian, depending on and consumers can choose the different dialects. And and we don't do that for every show, but we do that for anime because we find that specifically for anime content, there's this preference for, people have different preferences for different dialects when they watch anime. So it's those little nuances. So localization has been the key. In terms of your other question, Abu Hassan, regarding the impact, as a number of people we employ is relatively small in our organization, not like Kareem. We have 200 people in our organization. So that direct impact is perhaps 200 people. But the industry we're in, we tend to have a much wider and lasting impact on the media and the telecom networking industry. We're one of the biggest bandwidth consumers for all ISPs in the region, be it EAND in UAE or STC, and that requires a significant investment from our side that goes into that telecom value chain. And then on the other hand, for hosting and CPU and GPU consumption, again, we're investing in the hosting infrastructure, so we're investing in that value chain. That tends to have a cascading effect in the economy. But perhaps the one area where we make the biggest impact is when we create original content in the region, especially in UAE, where we've produced 2 shows in 2023. We're hiring local screenwriters, local producers, local cameramen, and local talent to create these shows. And then we bring the show to our service. And not only that, then we are also making those shows available on global airlines. And we're making those shows available on global platforms to US, to Europe, where the regional stories and the regionally produced, locally produced UAE content is being viewed across the globe. And that's perhaps the most impactful work we do, is taking this stories from this part of the world, putting UAE's brand on it, and then taking it globally.
So I've seen the recent own production that started using production and actors between Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia. Is this something that you'll continue, and you've tasted the sweetener of it, and that's something that's continuing?
So this seems to be a proven formula where we can bring talent from multiple countries. The show that I think you're referring to, Hassan, is Al-Waid, where we're able to bring in Saudi, UAE, and Egyptian talent all together under one show. And for those of you who watched that show, you'll see the quality of the production is on par with, we all remember Vikings from a few years ago. It is basically on par with Vikings in terms of the quality of production, the action, and the investment that's gone into it. And that is one show, inshallah, that will be shown across the world, but it's a story from this part of the world told at a global stage.
Bassem?
Yes, for Kareem, we're a marketplace that brings demand and supply together. Supply are the captains who drive the cars, for example, or the motorbikes, and demand are the customers who want these services. And if you think of what economic impact that has had, I'll take one aspect. Our captains, we were even able to create 3 million jobs in the region from just having captains come on and start delivering or moving people around. These 3 million captains earned close to $5 billion over that period of time, over the last decade. And give you an example now, we're starting to introduce new services to these captains. For example, instant payments, something that did not exist before or exist in the world. Captains don't want to take credit cards in the services because that means there's going to be some time for you to pay them back. And so they prefer to use cash only. Cash creates a friction for the customer. So what did we do? Created an instant payment service working closely with the banks where a captain can take a credit card ride and then after the ride say, I want my money now. And he gets paid instantly within the next couple of minutes. And so in terms of economic impact, these are some of the numbers you can see on captains that we're creating on the supply side. On the customer side, you see more of social impact and some economic. But for example, in Saudi, before women could drive in Saudi Arabia, the Minister of Labor said there's a pre-Kareem and a post-Kareem era. In a pre-Kareem era, women had to depend on their husband, brother, uncle to drop them off to work on a reliable schedule, which wasn't a very successful mode. And so post-Kareem era, the ministry said there was probably 1 million jobs that were created for women in KSA because of a reliable service that can pick you up, drop you off in the kingdom. And so that is part of the social impact that was created. And then finally, there is one element which we did not calculate or foresee, which is the impact on the ecosystem. When the deal happened with Kareem, and it gave proof to many entrepreneurs and many investors that the region can and has the appetite to build companies that can compete and create value for its people in this region. And I think, the stat is there's over 100 Kareemers who left since 2020 and started a company in the region.
Excellent. Well, we are in the World Government Summit, and it's the third day of the World Government Summit, and we cannot end this panel without talking about the role of the government in accelerating growth for such digital platforms. And it depends. We've seen different models around the world of the government role in either thriving the growth of some of the local players, restricting international players. What do you think the role of the government, and what's your wish list for the interaction of the various government around the region that you want to serve in accelerating the growth of your own platform and other platform that matter? And the second part, how do you want to see the relationship also between, in general, in the collaborative mode between public sector and private sector?
So it's a great question. For banking, we are super well regulated. So incredibly paramount for us. I think governments need to provide two things. One is they need to provide the framework for regulatory capability. So there are markets we are keen on that we can't go to because the framework for digital account opening does not exist. So I think they need to accelerate those frameworks. I think a lot of time has passed, so it's a proven model. I think the second thing they need to do, and which I think UAE has done incredibly well, is provide the digital services that complement and enable this. So if you look at the UAE, you have your IDA, which is digitized. You have UAE Pass, which instantly you can get data based on consumer consent, run all your risk analytics, and open an account instantly. I think this drives a lot of empowerment to the economy. So I think these are the two capabilities. One example I would take that I'm a big fan of is in India, they built India Stack, which has become a phenomenal accelerator of growth. Everything from setting up companies. Just one example I'll take is they came up with a standardized tax. Every SME now has to put their invoice on this platform. What has happened is now businesses that could never ask for money are now able to get loans, and hundreds of fintechs have emerged who are providing SME loans. And now it's a phenomenal growth story. So I think for me, governments need to enable this change with the right framework, because you want to make sure it's managed well. And they need to build core capabilities, because I think they will be accelerators of this change.
Excellent. Nice.
So for us, I think the governments or the investments from the telecom groups in the infrastructure are key enablers for our service, obviously. And sometimes the investments in the infrastructure, be it last mile fiber or 5G, those business cases aren't always strictly short-term commercial. Someone like the government has to step in and take a long-term view. And that has been a key enabler for us. So that's definitely the factor number one for us, is the infrastructure behind our service. That's a key enabler. The second part is around regulation for us. So around regulation, it's a double-edged sword for us, right? Too much regulation of media is also not ideal, as we see in other parts of the world. And operating in 21 countries, for us, we are fortunate that even though there's no one body that regulates all 21 countries from media point of view, all the key markets that we operate in see have similar guidelines on regulation and media, and I think there we have a perfect balance of regulation versus freedom. I think the third area for us, and this is where we're working closely now with EN Group as well as other ISPs in the region, is tackling this global issue of piracy and protecting IP rights. Especially as we go into sports, I think this is our key focus, is to work closely with ISPs in the region and coming up with policies as well as means to control that.
Excellent. I guess, Basil, for you, I mean, 13 markets, diverse regulator, different type of regulators of different type of services that you have.
Yeah, so we have the best case scenarios and the worst case scenarios in general. But governments either have a choice, it's black and white. They either embrace the digital world or they resist it and fall behind. And I think the last decade, there's proof of that. I remember in 2015-16, we were in the courts in a city in Pakistan. And the transport authority gentleman kept referring to a carriage law from 1865, saying, Kareem is breaking X, Y, and Z laws. And the judge stopped him and said, can you stop referring to a carriage law? Stop what you're saying, work with these guys, and figure out how to move this country forward. Really, this is, an example of not embracing it. And on the other extreme is Dubai. Dubai and Kareem had probably the first JV, PPP, in the world where they got taxis to work on a ride-hailing app. And fast forward 3-4 years, today, you can hail a taxi in Dubai with an ETA of less than 3 minutes, which does not happen anywhere in the world. So, you can see the difference in how governments make a decision to embrace or resist. Eventually, you have to embrace, otherwise you fall behind and you stop the country from moving forward. I think these PPPs between the private sector and public sector can only speed up the economic growth and social impact that these platforms can achieve in the region.
Excellent. So we need to wrap up because we're a little bit over time. So just short words on your views of the future moving forward and the leveraging of this technological evolution and your potential growth. How do you see the future moving forward?
So look, we're very excited. We're very excited about what comes tomorrow. We think economies will change, business models will change, and we've been geared up correctly to embrace that change. I think we are born in the right region. This is the place where growth is coming from for the next 10 years, so we're super excited about this.
Naz?
Same for us. As far as our industry is concerned, streaming has only seen less than 10% penetration in the region, less than 10% penetration of the mobile broadband connections in the region. So we think there's a massive upside yet to come, and inshallah, next 10 years will show that.
Yeah, 100%. I'll just say, the West and the East have proven that a few technology giants can actually move the country forward. So we need Kareem and a few more technology platforms to actually move this region forward.
Excellent. Well, there you have it. These are the 3 digital champions of the regions. Wishing for more to come in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.